Be true to yourself. Are you being true to your past self or your future self? Because if you're being true to your past self, nothing will change. You'll remain just as you are. But if you be true to your future self, your life could change beyond measure. My name is Chanté Earl, and I'm a self-published author, entrepreneur, and real estate professional. Now, I haven't always been those things, because I remember a time where I was running the streets, hanging with gangs, being bullied in school, and felt as if I was unworthy of love and was looking for acceptance in all the wrong places. But what I learned is that when you choose the wrong associates and hang out with the wrong people, it can stunt your growth. So I decided to dedicate my life to personal development, surrounding myself around individuals who would raise the bar and challenge me for something better. So I chose to go through a process of change. Now let's talk about the process that I went through. You know, as early as I can remember growing up in the inner city of San Bernardino, California, I remember being raised by a single mom, and we moved around the city a lot. And I mean, we moved frequently. And a lot of times when we moved, it wasn't by choice. All I knew is that I would come home and then I'd find out that we were moving. But as we moved, I had to start new schools. And I remember starting those schools and having to stand up and introduce myself to the new students. And it always went similar to this. Hi, my name is Chanté. And I would hear little kids in the background laughing and saying things like, why does mom name him Chanté? He has a girl's name. And they would bully me because of my name. And then I would have to repeat that same exact process when we moved to another school. And eventually I got to the point to where I stopped introducing myself as Chanté and started introducing myself as Sean. You see, I was beginning to change my identity. And I didn't know that it was happening, but I knew that I wanted more. And I remember going to another school at the age of 9. And now I had already started to meet new friends, and I started getting comfortable. And I remember this school, we had a talent contest, and I never forget it. Buddies of mine were deciding that they were going to join the talent contest, and I said I wanted to get involved, but I really didn't. But they were going to do it. But I was scared. And then they decided that they were going to name the crew the Warriors. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Warriors, but The Warriors was a movie where there was a group of kids riding around on skates and skateboards, tagging up the city, dancing, and it seemed to be a lot of fun in the movie until you noticed that some of the kids went to jail, and that ended the fun. But if I was going to be part of the crew, the Warriors, you best believe that I was going to go ahead and do the talent show. So I remember that day, and I got up, and my turn was to dance, and I began to dance and pop lock, and I recall the audience clapping and cheering and laughing, and I remember how it felt. I felt as if I was accepted. I felt that I was a part of something. And I liked the feeling of being liked. Don't we all want to be accepted and liked? Well, from that day on, I started to act out and become a class clown. And people in my class were saying, oh, he's the funny guy. And I took that on and I ran with it. Because from that day on, I began to make people laugh and begin to be a little joker in school. But as I got a little older, I remember a time that my sister was riding in the car with my mom, and a defining moment was beginning to happen. My mom was telling us that she was going to be leaving the state, and me and my sister was going to be left behind with the family member, Mama Lottie and Daddy Fred. Now, Mama Lottie and Daddy Fred we were like, we don't want to necessarily go over their house, because when we went over their home, it wasn't the cleanest environment. It wasn't the best place to be around, because they would always be drinking and fighting and fussing, and you never would know what would happen at their home. But my mom decided to drop us off, gave us a kiss, and she was gone. And my sister and I went outside, began playing, and just a normal day, until a car drives up, and in the car was my dad. You see, my dad, he hadn't been around because he was in and out, and a lot of times when we saw him, he would take us shopping and then leave again. But the thing about it is, my dad, he always was there when we needed him the most. And he picked us up, and we began to live with him for the next 6.5 years. You see, living with my father was something else, because my dad was a good person. He loved us. He was strong. He was a well-dressed man, and he had a big heart to help everyone. But he also had his challenges as well. You see, my father was a chronic alcoholic, and there was many occasions where he would drink over excessively, and there was so many occasions where they would be in situations where they would fight and argue, and it was just a very unstable house that I was living in. And my dad had a sting that he didn't want us going home after school. He said that when you get home from school, you go to the library. And my sister and I used to always be at this library just hanging out. And I was about 13 years old. And at the library, we'd make phone calls to our mother, who had moved 3,000 miles away. And we would pick up the phone and we would give her a call. And it would go something like this. We would hear the operator on the other end. Hi, would you accept a collect call from Chanté and Sharice? And we'd get on the other end, and I would be like, Mom, where are you? When are you coming back home? Where are you at? And my mom would tell us, I'll be back soon. And soon would never happen, because at that time in my life, at 13, now she had been gone for over 3 years. Have you ever been promised something and it never really been fulfilled? Or have you ever made someone a promise and you didn't keep? Well, as a young man going through adolescence and puberty, I was at a point to where I was reaching out for acceptance in all the wrong places. So I began to get in the streets, and I joined the local gang. Now, being in the gang, it seemed like they were my friends, because they would protect me and they would be there for me if I needed them. But inside, I was still very lonely, trying to figure out my path and trying to understand what it was that I would be doing with my life. In school, I was getting good grades sometime, and then other times my grades just went straight downhill. You see, because I was one of those young adolescent teens just trying to figure it out and trying to figure out who I was and what it was I was going to do with my life. Until something happened at age 16. At age 16, I came home one day and my dad told me that my mom was in town. Now, at this point, I was not happy. I was saying whatever. It didn't matter to me. She had already been gone for 7 years. And my mom was in town, but yet I wasn't excited. Inside, I was angry. Inside, I was confused. But on the other end, I was excited to know that, yes, I would finally be able to see her again. And then that evening, we had a knock at the door. And I opened the door, and there stood my mom. A 4-foot, 11-inch frame, standing there with her arms wide open, saying, "Son, I'm here." And all I could think about is giving her a big hug and wanting to be next to her and say, "Mom, I love you. I'm so happy to see you." And I gave her a hug, and it was as if all the anger that I had inside that I was building up had disappeared. And at that moment, I had forgiven her for everything that she had already done, but yet still confused about what it was going to be and how long she'd be around. Now, that day, my sister was still in the house, and she was there. She'd seen Mom as well, and instead of hugging her, I believe she went in her room. See, she was older than I was. She wasn't as accepting as I was at that time. But my dad, he was saying, you know, hey, how you doing? I'm glad to see you. You see, he had did the best that he could do, raising 2 kids, dealing with his own personal challenges, but yet he was a man and he took care of us. Now that week, I had some decisions to make. My mom was telling me that she wasn't going to stay long, and she'd actually be leaving. But she then came to me and said, hey, you know what? If you want to come back with me, you can. Now, come back with me didn't even register in my mind because, you see, she had moved to a city outside of California, a city called Peoria, Illinois, and just the name of it made me a little bit nauseated. But I was like, I would never leave my friends, my gang. I would never leave my sister, and I definitely wouldn't leave my dad because they had been there for me for the last 7 years, and the last thing I would want to do is part from them. You see, I had just gotten comfortable, and I was almost on my way to being an adult. But later on that week, my life seemed to be a little bit different, and I felt a little bit different inside as well, because I knew that my mother would be leaving, but yet inside I wanted to be next to her. So I decided that week, after seeing all of the challenges that I was going through, bad grades, not necessarily graduating, friends going to jail and dying, and just being in a location that seemed to be very, very bad for my health, I made a decision that I would move and I would go live with her. Now, the hardest part, though, was I had to tell my dad. You see, me and him, we were like this. And anything I needed, he was always there to give me. And he was my protector, my knight in shining armor. So I remember that week having to talk to him, and I said, Dad, listen, I need to tell you something. I want to go live with my mother. And my dad began to break down and begin to cry. And he said, no, don't leave. Why are you going? I mean, haven't I been doing everything for you? Haven't I been giving you all that you've been asking for? And I'm like, Dad, no, it's not you. It's not you, but I need my mom. And he said, you know, just don't leave me. I need you. And I said, Dad, I need you too, but I'm going to be leaving. And he said, okay, son, listen. You're 16 now, and you're almost a man, and it's your decision, but if you decide to go, just know that if there's anything you ever need, I'm there. And then I remember looking at my sister and having to go talk to her. You see, I figured, hey, if I was going, she would be going with me. So I went into her room and said, sis, listen, I need to tell you something. I decided that I'm going to go live with Mom. And she began to tell me, you better go, but I'm not going with you. And then at that point, my decision had changed, and I said, no, I'm not going then. There's no way that I'm going without you. You see, seeing me and my youngest sister, again, we experienced all the roller coaster rides and all the turmoil that we had been through. It was always her and I. And I felt that if I was leaving, she would leave. But she told me, no, I'm not going, but you are. And she literally got upset when I told her I wasn't. She said, no, you're getting out of the city. You need to go. It's good for you. I'm okay. I'll take care of things here. You go. And I remember that week, My sister and my dad drove me to the Greyhound bus station, gave me $100 and put me on the bus to travel 3,500 miles away to a city that I've never been to by myself on this bus ride. All I can remember is me waving to them by as the bus drove off and crying, scared, uncertain about what it was I was going to and who would be there for me when I arrived. Have you ever done something that you were scared of? Have you ever been in a situation where your whole life would change? You know, I call these things defining moments of change. And when you have a defining moment, it's a point in your life when something happens that changes the way you are, and you'd never be the same again once that defining moment has occurred. And so many of us go through defining moments in life, and we don't always recognize that that is a defining moment until later on in life when we look back on it and say, you know what, that decision changed my entire life. Can you recall a defining moment of change in your life? You see, when I arrived in Illinois, Peoria that is, the bus drove up and I looked out the window and I could see the little 4'11" woman waiting there smiling. But I also saw a lot of snow on the ground, and let me tell you something, this snow was something brand new to me because, again, I'm from California. And I also seen one of my oldest sisters there. So I was very excited just to know that they would be there with me as well. I get off the bus, my mother grabs me up, and we go to the house that we were living in. And I was scared, uncertain. I didn't really know who she was. But one thing I did know is that I was with her and I would get to know her. So over the course of my sophomore year and my junior year, I began to build a better relationship with my mom until I got into a senior year. And eventually I decided that I wanted more and I was going to get my grades together because I had to get my diploma, if nothing else, because I always knew that I was capable of doing more and being more. I just was choosing to not do it as well as I knew it was capable of doing. But I still was looking for acceptance in all the wrong areas. So a lot of my old habits that I took from San Bernardino, I brought with me to this new place that I was still dealing with inside, looking and going and being involved with things that I knew I shouldn't have been involved with. But yet, I made it to the point of graduation day. And I'm here to tell you that this was probably one of the most exciting moments of my life, because I remember sitting there with my cap and gown on and hearing my name called once again. But this time it was different. It wasn't where kids would tease me. It was me being called and honored and being accepted for this graduation, making it through these 12 years of high school, not knowing what I went through, others not being fully aware of who I was, but yet I knew that I would needed to be true to myself. And that was my future self, which I always knew which was possible. So they called my name once again, Chanté Earl. And I stood up strong with my chest out, and I walked up to the stairs, and I could look out as I got on the stage, and all I could see was my mom. And in my mind, I could see my dad and my sister, because I had spoke to them earlier that day and told them that I would be graduating. They knew and they were excited, but they weren't able to make it. But they were there with me in spirit. And all I could see is them and my sisters there and my whole entire family celebrating me as I was handed my diploma. I looked in the crowd and I smiled and I said, yes, yes, I did it. I graduated. You see, that was one of the most exciting days of my life, because it was something that I had to go through in order to get there. And I needed to be true to my future self, because I knew that there was more And by changing my environment, it changed my life. And what I learned is this, is that when you change your environment and your relationships, your whole in life can change. So I want to encourage you out there who are watching this live video. I want you to know that we all have a story. We've all been somewhere and done some things that we're not excited about or proud of. But we all have to be able to accept and forgive and learn to love ourselves for who we are, our whole self for what it is we've done and who we've become. And if we want to change, it's been said that it's going to come from one or two sources. One is either out of inspiration or the other is desperation. So you choose the level you want to play at. You choose what it will be. Will you be inspired or will you get so desperate that change has to happen? And will you be true to yourself? Because either again, you're being true to your past self, the things that have already happened that you cannot change, are true to your future self. Thank you for listening to my story. My name is Chanté Earl. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment below and share with me how this story has inspired you to change. Thank you, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.